The mining station orbiting Kepler 442c shuddered as another asteroid fragment struck its outer hull. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen barely looked up from his console, his weathered hands dancing across holographic displays with practiced ease. At 62, he had survived more hostile environments than most humans ever encountered, but this assignment pushed even his considerable limits. Kepler 442c wasn't just another harsh world. The Galactic Council had classified it as a class-13 Deathworld, a designation reserved for planets so hostile that even the most advanced civilizations avoided them entirely. The atmosphere was a toxic cocktail of methane and sulfur compounds. The surface temperature fluctuated between -200 and +400 degrees Celsius, depending on which of its three suns dominated the sky, and the electromagnetic storms could fry unshielded electronics from orbit. But Kepler 442c held something the galaxy desperately needed: trilithium crystals. These rare formations occurred only under the most extreme geological conditions, and the demand for their energy-storing properties had made them worth more than their weight in antimatter. When the initial surveys detected massive deposits beneath the planet's crust, every major corporation and government in known space wanted a piece of the action. The problem was simple. No known species could survive on Kepler 442c long enough to establish mining operations. Robotic systems failed within hours due to the corrosive atmosphere and electromagnetic interference. Even the mighty Krillian Empire, whose warriors could survive in hard vacuum, had lost 3 separate expeditions to the planet's hostile conditions. That's when someone remembered humanity's peculiar reputation. Humans, the galaxy had learned through painful experience, possessed an almost supernatural ability to not only survive in impossible conditions, but somehow thrive in them. While other species built elaborate habitats and relied on advanced technology to explore hostile worlds, humans seemed to adapt through sheer stubborn determination and an inexplicable talent for finding solutions where none should exist. Marcus had volunteered for the Kepler 442c assignment not for glory or profit, but because his daughter needed surgery that his mining pension couldn't cover. The hazard pay for working a Class-3 Deathworld would solve that problem permanently. He'd left Earth 3 months ago aboard the cargo vessel Prometheus, accompanied by 49 other human volunteers who had their own reasons for accepting what most considered a suicide mission. The mining platform itself was a marvel of human engineering stubbornness. Rather than trying to build something that could withstand Kepler 442c's hostile environment, the designers had created a station that expected to be damaged and could repair itself continuously. Redundant systems backed up redundant systems, and every critical component had at least 3 different backup methods. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead as he rerouted power around a section of hull that had been compromised by acid rain. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see the planet's surface churning beneath a perpetual storm of yellow-green clouds. Lightning bolts the size of city blocks carved jagged patterns across the sky, and in the distance, one of the massive volcanoes that dotted the landscape spewed molten rock into the toxic atmosphere. Beautiful morning, isn't it? The voice belonged to Dr. Sarah Martinez, the mission's xenobiologist. Despite being only 38, she had already made significant discoveries on 6 different hostile worlds. Her specialty was finding life in places where life shouldn't exist, and Kepler 442c represented the ultimate challenge in her field. Marcus grunted acknowledgement without turning around. Define beautiful. Yesterday's acid storm only ate through 2 layers of hull plating instead of 3. Sarah laughed, settling into the chair beside his workstation. She held a steaming cup of what passed for coffee on the mining platform, though the harsh conditions required them to synthesize most of their consumables from raw materials. I've been monitoring the electromagnetic patterns from the northern continent. There's something unusual happening down there. Unusual how? Last week you said the lightning patterns were unusual. Turned out they were just trying to kill us in a slightly different way. This is different. Sarah pulled up a holographic display showing electromagnetic readings from the planet's surface. The data formed complex, almost rhythmic patterns that pulsed across the screen like a heartbeat. These signatures don't match any natural phenomena I've seen before. They're too regular, too purposeful. Marcus finally turned to look at the display, his engineer's mind automatically analyzing the patterns. Could be resonance effects from the trilithium deposits. Those crystals can create some weird electromagnetic feedback loops. That's what I thought initially, but watch this. Sarah manipulated the display, overlaying several days of readings. The patterns are changing, evolving. Natural resonance doesn't do that. This looks almost like what? Like communication. The mining platform shuddered again, this time more violently. Warning lights flashed across Marcus's console, as multiple systems reported damage from another electromagnetic pulse. But as he worked to reroute power and repair damaged circuits, his mind kept returning to Sarah's data. In 40 years of engineering, he had learned to trust when something felt wrong. And those patterns definitely felt wrong. Outside the viewport, Kepler 442c continued its eternal dance of destruction, unaware that somewhere in its toxic depths, something was stirring. Something that had been waiting in the darkness for longer than human civilization had existed. Something that had given up hope of ever finding kindred spirits in a universe that seemed determined to snuff out life wherever it appeared. But humans had a talent for finding the impossible, and sometimes the impossible found them back. As Marcus worked through the night to keep their fragile outpost functioning, electromagnetic pulses deep beneath the planet's surface began forming new patterns, more complex than before, as if something was learning to speak in a language it had never needed before. The first contact between humanity and the thing that dwelt in Kepler 442c's depths was still days away. But already the foundations were being laid for a friendship that would change both species forever. In the toxic storms of a world that seemed designed to kill everything it touched, hope was about to take wing. 3 days after Sarah's discovery, the electromagnetic patterns had evolved into something that made the entire scientific team nervous. The pulses now came in complex sequences that repeated every 4 hours and 17 minutes, with subtle variations that suggested deliberate modification rather than natural phenomena. Marcus stood in the platform's main laboratory, watching Dr. Martinez and her team analyze the latest readings. The lab was cramped and functional, every surface covered with monitoring equipment and displays showing data from the planet below. The constant background hum of life support systems mixed, with the occasional groan of stressed metal as the platform endured another electromagnetic storm. Whatever's down there is definitely trying to communicate, Sarah said, highlighting specific patterns on her display. These sequences are too complex and too purposeful to be random. It's like listening to someone learning a new language in real time. Commander Torres, the mission leader, frowned at the data. A former military officer who had led successful operations on 5 different hostile worlds, she approached every situation with methodical caution. Could it be the trilithium deposits responding to our mining operations? We've been sending down probe drills for 2 weeks now. That's what I thought initially, Sarah replied. But the patterns started before we began drilling. They're not responding to us. They're trying to reach us. The implications hung heavy in the air. In 300 years of space exploration, humanity had encountered dozens of alien species, but first contact protocols still called for extreme caution. The fact that this potential intelligence lived on a class Thurine Deathworld only complicated matters further. Marcus studied the electromagnetic readings with an engineer's practical eye. If something's alive down there, how is it surviving those conditions? The surface temperature would cook most known life forms, and the atmospheric pressure would crush anything that wasn't already dead from the toxic gases. Life finds a way, Sarah said, unconsciously echoing words spoken by scientists for generations. We found organisms living in deep ocean thermal vents inside active volcanoes, even in the vacuum of space. If something evolved on Kepler 442c, it would be adapted to conditions that would kill everything else in the galaxy. Dr. Kim Park, the team's communications specialist, looked up from his workstation. I've been running pattern analysis on these signals. If this is communication, it's unlike anything in our databases. It doesn't follow any known linguistic structures or mathematical principles. Maybe because it's not designed for beings like us, Torres said. If something evolved in that hellscape, its method of communication might be as alien as its biology. The discussion was interrupted by a proximity alarm. Through the laboratory's viewport, they could see a small transport ship approaching the mining platform. Its hull bore the distinctive blue and silver markings of the Galactic Council's Xenological Survey Division. We have company, Marcus muttered. Wasn't expecting any visitors out here. Commander Torres activated the communications system. Unidentified vessel, this is mining platform Prometheus. State your business. The response came immediately, delivered in the crisp accent of core world nobility. Platform Prometheus, this is survey ship Curiosity, under command of senior xenologist Veltar Kresh of the Altarian Republic. We've detected unusual electromagnetic emissions from your location and request permission to dock. Marcus exchanged glances with Sarah. The Galactic Council had strict protocols about investigating potential first contact situations, and their arrival couldn't be a coincidence. Someone had been monitoring their communications, or the electromagnetic patterns were strong enough to be detected throughout the system. Permission granted. Curiosity. Dock at Bay 2. An hour later, senior xenologist Veltar Kresh stood in the platform's conference room, his tall, slender frame draped in the flowing robes traditional to his species. The Altarians were one of the older races in the galaxy, with a reputation for scientific precision and cultural arrogance. Veltar's golden eyes examined the human facility with barely concealed disdain. Primitive accommodations, he observed, settling into a chair designed for humanoid physiology. I suppose it's adequate for your species' crude mining operations. Commander Torres maintained diplomatic composure despite the insult. We weren't expecting distinguished visitors, senior xenologist. How can we assist the Galactic Council? The Council has been monitoring electromagnetic anomalies from this system for the past week, Veltar replied, accessing a portable holographic display. Our analysis suggests the possibility of undiscovered intelligence. As per Galactic Statute 847, all potential first contact situations must be investigated by qualified xenological personnel. Sarah leaned forward. With respect, senior xenologist, we have qualified scientists investigating the phenomenon. I have advanced degrees in xenobiology and have participated in first contact protocols on 6 previous occasions. Veltar's expression suggested he had just been addressed by a particularly articulate pet. Human credentials, while amusing, are not recognized by the Council for situations of this magnitude. Your species has a regrettable tendency toward emotional decision-making and cultural contamination of contact scenarios. Marcus felt his jaw clench. 3 months of risking his life on a world that could kill him in a dozen different ways, and now some bureaucrat wanted to swoop in and take credit for their discoveries. The electromagnetic patterns are coming from deep within the planet, Torres said, maintaining professional detachment. Our preliminary analysis suggests intelligence, but we haven't attempted contact. Prudent, if surprising, coming from humans, Veltar said. The Council will establish proper protocols for investigation. Your mining operations will cease immediately until the situation is resolved. Like hell they will. The words came from Marcus before he could stop them. Every eye in the room turned toward him, and he realized he had just complicated an already delicate situation. But 40 years of dangerous work had taught him when to stand his ground. Excuse me? Veltar's golden eyes narrowed. You heard me, Marcus continued, past the point of backing down. My crew and I have been risking our lives for 3 months to establish operations here. We've survived acid storms, electromagnetic pulses, and equipment failures that would have sent your kind running for the nearest space station. If there's something intelligent down there, we'll be the ones to make contact. The human speaks out of ignorance, Veltar said dismissively. First contact with unknown intelligences requires delicate handling and sophisticated protocols. Your species lacks the cultural refinement for such responsibilities. Sarah stood, her own patience finally exhausted. Cultural refinement? We're the ones who figured out how to survive on this Deathworld while your people labeled it impossible to explore. Maybe it takes a little human stubbornness to make friends with something that lives in hell. The conference room fell silent except for the constant background hum of life support systems. Outside the viewport, Kepler 442c continued its eternal storm, unaware that its potential first contact with galactic civilization was being decided by politics and prejudice rather than scientific curiosity. Deep beneath the planet's toxic surface, the electromagnetic patterns pulsed with increasing urgency, as if something sensed that its chance for communication might be slipping away. The standoff in the conference room was broken by Dr. Park's urgent voice over the intercom. Commander Torres, you need to see this immediately. The patterns have changed dramatically. Everyone rushed to the laboratory where Park was staring at his displays with a mixture of excitement and confusion. The electromagnetic readings showed a completely different structure than before, with rapid, almost frantic pulses replacing the previous steady patterns. It started about 10 minutes ago, Park explained. Right around the time the Altarian ship docked. The signals are much stronger now and they're coming from multiple locations across the planet. Sarah studied the data, her scientific mind racing. It's like something woke up. Or got excited. The complexity has increased by at least 300%. Beltar pushed past the humans to examine the readings, his golden eyes widening despite his efforts to maintain superiority. Remarkable. These patterns show sophisticated mathematical structures. This is definitely intelligent communication. More than that, Park added, highlighting specific sequences. I'm detecting response patterns. Whatever's down there isn't just broadcasting randomly. It's having a conversation with itself, or with multiple entities. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the platform's environmental systems. Multiple entities? How many are we talking about? Based on the signal origins, I'm reading at least 12 distinct sources, possibly more. They're distributed across 3 continents. Commander Torres absorbed this information with military efficiency, so we're potentially dealing with a planet-wide intelligence network, rather than a single entity. That changes everything. Indeed it does, Veltar agreed, though his tone had lost some of its condescending edge. This situation requires immediate escalation to the Council's highest authorities. A civilization capable of surviving on a Class 2 Deathworld could pose significant security implications. Sarah turned on him with barely controlled anger. Security implications? We haven't even established that they're hostile. For all we know, they're trying to welcome us. Naive human thinking, Veltar replied, but his dismissal lacked its earlier conviction. Any species capable of thriving in these conditions would necessarily be extremely dangerous. The Council must evaluate the threat level before proceeding. The argument was interrupted by a new alarm. Dr. Park's displays flashed red as energy readings spiked across the board. Something's happening on the surface. I'm reading massive electromagnetic buildup in the northern hemisphere. Through the laboratory's viewport, they could see Kepler 442c's perpetual storm clouds beginning to swirl in new patterns. Lightning that had previously struck randomly now seemed to follow deliberate paths, creating geometric designs across the planet's toxic atmosphere. By the void, Marcus whispered. They're using the planet's own electrical systems to communicate with us. The realization hit everyone simultaneously. Whatever lived on Kepler 442c hadn't just adapted to the world's hostile environment. They had learned to control it. The electromagnetic storms that made the planet so dangerous were tools in the hands of its inhabitants. This is unprecedented, Veltar said, his scientific curiosity finally overriding his political caution. No known species has ever demonstrated this level of environmental manipulation on a planetary scale. Sarah was already moving toward the communications console. If they're trying to talk to us, we should try to respond. Basic mathematical concepts may be prime numbers or simple geometric patterns. Absolutely not, Veltar commanded. Any communication attempts must be approved by the Council and conducted according to established protocols. And how long will that take? Torres asked. Days? Weeks? If they're intelligent enough to control planetary weather systems, they're probably smart enough to realize when they're being ignored. As if responding to her words, the electromagnetic patterns from the planet's surface intensified. The geometric lightning displays grew more complex, forming intricate mandalas of electrical energy that pulsed in perfect synchronization with the detected signals. Marcus found himself thinking about his daughter back on Earth and the surgery she needed. But more than that, he thought about the courage it must take to live on a world like Kepler 442c. To not just survive, but apparently thrive in conditions that would kill almost any other form of life. There was something admirable about that kind of determination. They're not giving up, he said quietly. Look at those patterns. They're getting more elaborate, more insistent. Whatever they are, they really want to talk to us. Dr. Park's instruments detected another change in the signals. The patterns are starting to incorporate elements from our own electromagnetic emissions. They're analyzing our technology and trying to communicate using frequencies we can understand. They're learning, Sarah said with growing excitement. In real time, they're figuring out how to bridge the communication gap between our species. Veltar studied the data with grudging respect. The learning curve is extraordinary. Most first contact situations require months or years to establish basic communication protocols. This intelligence appears to be adapting within hours. So what do we do? Torres asked. Continue monitoring while they try to reach us, or take the initiative and try to respond. Before anyone could answer, the platform's main communications array activated on its own. Every screen in the laboratory displayed the same message, repeated in dozens of languages, including several that had been extinct for centuries. Greetings, sky swimmers. We have waited long for those who dance with danger as we do. Are you the ones who sing in the spaces between stars? The silence in the laboratory was absolute. Everyone stared at the displays, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Not only had the planetary intelligence learned human languages, but they had somehow accessed the platform's computer systems and databases to do it. How is that possible? Torres whispered. Park's hands flew over his console, checking security protocols and system integrity. They didn't hack us in any conventional sense. It's more like they learned to speak directly to our electronic systems using electromagnetic manipulation. Sarah laughed, the sound sharp with wonder and disbelief. They called us sky swimmers. They think we're swimming through space instead of flying through it, and they want to know if we sing between stars. Marcus found himself smiling despite the impossible situation. I like them already. Anyone who lives on a Deathworld and still thinks poetically about the universe can't be all bad. Feltar was examining the translation matrices the intelligence had somehow created. This is far beyond our most optimistic projections for first contact communication. They've demonstrated technological capabilities that rival or exceed our own, combined with what appears to be genuine curiosity about us. So do we answer them? Torres asked. All eyes turned to the displays, where the message continued to pulse patiently, waiting for a response that would determine whether humanity's first contact with the inhabitants of Kepler 442c would be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, or another bureaucratic disaster managed by committee. Outside the viewport, the planet's lightning continued to dance in patterns that looked almost joyful, as if something that had been alone for far too long had finally found companions worthy of the endless storm. The debate over how to respond lasted exactly 37 seconds before Dr. Martinez made the decision for everyone. Her fingers moved across the communications console with practiced efficiency, uploading a simple mathematical sequence followed by basic information about human biology and culture. What are you doing? Feltar demanded, reaching for the console. Making history, Sarah replied calmly, stepping between the Altarian and her workstation. Someone has to be brave enough to actually talk to them. The response was immediate. The platform's displays flickered as new messages appeared, this time accompanied by three-dimensional holographic images that materialized in the laboratory's central space. The holograms showed mathematical concepts, star charts, and what appeared to be biological diagrams of the intelligence they were communicating with. Marcus whistled low as he examined the holographic display. The beings on Kepler 442c were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They appeared to be massive serpentine creatures with crystalline scales that could conduct and manipulate electromagnetic energy. Their bodies were perfectly adapted to the planet's hostile environment, with organs that could process toxic gases and withstand extreme temperature variations. Dragons, he said simply. They look like dragons made of living lightning. The biological data that accompanied the images was equally fascinating. The creatures, who referred to themselves as the Kethvari, were ancient beyond human comprehension. Individual lifespans measured in millennia, with some members of their species having lived through multiple stellar cycles. They were born in the electromagnetic storms that raged across their world, feeding on energy itself rather than conventional matter. But the most remarkable revelation came in their cultural information. The Kethvari were not just survivors of a death world, they were its guardians. Kepler 442c had once been a garden world with multiple intelligent species, but a cosmic disaster had transformed it into the hostile environment it was today. The Kethvari had chosen to stay and adapt rather than flee, spending eons terraforming their world in an attempt to eventually restore its original beauty. They've been alone for over 50,000 years, Sarah said, reading through the translated data. They're the last survivors of their original civilization, trying to keep their world alive until they can find a way to heal it. Dr. Park's instruments detected new activity from the planet's surface, They're sending more complex data now. Star charts, historical records, even what looks like poetry. The poetry was particularly moving, written in electromagnetic patterns that created haunting melodies when translated to audio frequencies. It spoke of endless storms endured in solitude, of hope maintained through centuries of darkness, and of dreams about the day when other sky swimmers might come to share the dance between the stars. Commander Torres studied the cultural data with military precision. They're not hostile. If anything, they seem almost desperately lonely. 50,000 years of isolation would drive most species insane. The Kethvari appear to have remarkable psychological resilience, Veltar observed, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine scientific interest. Their social structure emphasizes collective memory and shared purpose. Each individual carries the experiences of their entire civilization. Marcus found himself deeply moved by the dragon's story. Here was a species that had faced planetary extinction and chosen to fight rather than flee. They had spent millennia adapting to impossible conditions, holding on to hope that their world could eventually be restored. It reminded him of humanity's own stubborn refusal to accept defeat in the face of overwhelming odds. "What do they want from us?" Torres asked. The answer came directly from the dragons themselves. New text appeared on the displays, accompanied by images that showed Kepler 4422c gradually transforming from its current hellscape into something resembling a garden world. "We have learned much about making life survive where death rules, but we lack the knowledge to make death give way to life again. Your
people are young but clever. Perhaps together we can
teach our world to dream of flowers instead of storms. They want our help with terraforming," Sarah said, wonder evident in her voice. Not just maintaining the world as it is, but actually reversing the damage and restoring the original ecosystem. "Impossible," Veltar stated automatically. Class Thuthind. Deathworlds cannot be terraformed. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of multiple stars. "You speak like the others who came before," appeared new text on the displays, always calculating why dreams cannot become real. "We have learned that impossibility is just another word for not yet discovered how." Marcus laughed at the gentle rebuke. "I think they've got your number, Veltar. When did impossible ever stop anyone from trying?" The Altarian's golden eyes flashed with indignation. Scientific reality cannot be ignored simply because of optimistic thinking. Terraforming requires specific atmospheric conditions, temperature ranges, and biological foundations that simply do not exist on this world. "We do not seek to ignore reality," the dragons responded. "We seek to expand it. Your species has shown remarkable creativity in surviving environments that were not meant for you. Our species has learned to thrive where survival should be impossible. Perhaps together we can discover possibilities that neither could achieve alone." Their communication was interrupted by proximity alarms. 3 more ships were approaching the mining platform, their transponder codes identifying them as Council enforcement vessels. Someone had apparently decided that the first contact situation required official intervention. "It seems our conversation is about to become much more complicated," Torres observed. The dragons had detected the approaching ships as well. Their message carried a note of resignation that transcended species barriers. Always the same pattern. Hope arrives on small wings, followed by fear in great formations. "We have waited 50,000 years for sky swimmers brave enough to dream with us. Perhaps we must wait 50,000 more. Not if I have anything to say about it," Marcus muttered, moving toward the communications console. The approaching council ships represented everything he had spent his life fighting against. Bureaucrats who preferred safe failures to dangerous successes. Politicians who would rather maintain the status quo than risk change. But before he could transmit a response, Sarah was already typing. "We are not all the same. Friends of the storm. Some of us still remember how to dream of impossible things. If you're willing to teach us about dancing with lightning, we'll show you how to make flowers grow in hell." The response from the dragons came immediately, carried on electromagnetic pulses that seemed to dance with joy. "Then let us begin small. HFY Swimmer. Send one of your kind to visit our realm, and we will send one of ours to visit yours. If friendship can survive the journey between our worlds, perhaps together we can make worlds where friendship can thrive." As the Council enforcement ships grew larger in the viewport, Marcus realized that the real first contact between humans and the Kethvari wasn't going to happen in some sterile diplomatic facility. It was going to happen the way all the best human adventures began, with someone brave enough to take the first step into the unknown, regardless of who said it couldn't be done. The Council enforcement ships docked with military precision, their crews immediately securing the mining platform with the efficiency of a well-practiced occupation. High Admiral Zexhai of the Hegemony Fleet strode into the laboratory flanked by armed security personnel, her multiple eyes scanning the humans with barely concealed contempt. By order of the Galactic Council Emergency Protocol 77 Alpha, this first contact situation is now under official jurisdiction, she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. All unauthorized personnel will be relocated to holding quarters immediately. Commander Torres stepped forward, her military bearing meeting the Admiral's authority with practiced calm. With respect, Admiral, we have established productive communication with the planetary intelligence. Any disruption at this point could be diplomatically disastrous. Human opinions on diplomatic protocol are not required. Zexhai replied dismissively. Your species has a documented history of cultural contamination and emotional interference in first contact scenarios. This situation will be handled by qualified personnel using established procedures. Marcus felt his blood pressure rising as Council technicians began disconnecting the communication equipment that had enabled their breakthrough. With the dragons, 40 years of dangerous work had taught him to recognize bureaucratic stupidity when he saw it. And this was a textbook example. You're making a mistake, he said, stepping between a technician and the primary communications console. These beings have been isolated for 50,000 years. They finally found someone willing to listen to them. And you want to shut down the conversation so you can file the proper paperwork? The human will stand aside, Zexhai commanded, gesturing for her security team to intervene. Before the situation could escalate, every display in the laboratory suddenly activated with a message from the dragons. But this time the tone was completely different. Small, sharp minds have come to build walls where bridges were growing. We have seen this pattern before, always. The same fear of what cannot be controlled, Admiral. Zexhai's multiple eyes widened as she realized the planetary intelligence was addressing her directly. How are they accessing our systems? Dr. Park checked his instruments with growing amazement. They're not hacking anything. They're speaking directly to the electronics using precisely modulated electromagnetic fields. It's like they're having a conversation with the machines themselves. We mean no disrespect to those who guard the spaces between stars. The message continued. But we have learned that walls built from fear create only smaller prisons for those inside them. Veltar studied the communication with newfound respect. They're demonstrating diplomatic sophistication along with their technological capabilities. This is exactly the kind of measured response the Council protocols are designed to encourage. Protocols that apparently aren't necessary, Sarah observed. They're already showing more restraint than most first contact situations produce, and they learned our languages in less than 6 hours. High Admiral Zexhai was clearly struggling with a situation that didn't fit her operational parameters. The dragons weren't hostile, weren't making demands, and weren't displaying any of the behavioral patterns that would justify military intervention. Instead, they were demonstrating exactly the kind of patient, diplomatic approach that the Council claimed to value. A new message appeared on the displays, this one accompanied by holographic star charts showing the surrounding stellar region. We offer knowledge to those who swim. The dark between lights the storms of our world have taught us to read the songs that stars sing to each other. There are gardens waiting to bloom. In places your people have not yet learned to look. The star charts showed previously unknown worlds and nearby systems, with detailed analyses of their potential for supporting life. Some were garden worlds that had been overlooked by conventional surveys, while others could be terraformed using techniques the dragons had developed during their long isolation. Marcus whistled as he examined the data. They're offering to share 50,000 years of terraforming research. Do you have any idea what that knowledge is worth? More than the trilithium deposits we came here to mine, Torres replied, studying the charts with strategic interest. These worlds could support millions of colonists. Admiral Zexhai found herself in the uncomfortable position of potentially shutting down the most significant scientific and economic opportunity in galactic history because it didn't follow proper procedures. Her military training emphasized following orders, but her survival instincts recognized when flexibility might be more valuable than protocol. "What exactly are they proposing?" she asked, her tone marginally less hostile. The dragons responded immediately, as if they had been monitoring the conversation and waiting for someone in authority to ask the right question. Simple gifts between those who understand the beauty of surviving impossible things. We will share the songs our world has taught us about making life thrive where death rules. In return, we hope to learn the songs your people sing about carrying hope between stars. They want cultural exchange, Sarah said, excitement growing in her voice. Not just technological knowledge, but art, music, philosophy. They're offering to teach us advanced terraforming in exchange for learning about human culture. Why would an advanced civilization be interested in human cultural contributions? Veltar asked, though his tone had lost much of its earlier condescension. The answer came with what could only be described as gentle amusement. Because your people choose to sing while dancing with danger, rather than simply enduring it. We have survived 50,000 years of storms, but we remember little about joy. Perhaps it is time to learn that lesson again. Marcus found himself grinning despite the tension in the room. The dragons had just provided the perfect summary of what made humanity unique in the galaxy. Other species focused on efficiency, safety, and logical progression. Humans insisted on finding reasons to laugh even when everything was trying to kill them. They want to learn how to be happy, he said simply. 50,000 years of survival without joy. No wonder they're lonely. Admiral HFY studied the communications for several long minutes, her multiple eyes processing information with computational efficiency. Finally, she reached a decision that surprised everyone present. Security teams will maintain monitoring positions, but communication will continue under Joint Council human oversight, she announced. This situation represents potential benefits that outweigh protocol concerns. Veltar looked shocked. Admiral, the regulations also clearly state that first contact situations should be evaluated for strategic value to galactic civilization, HFY interrupted. 50,000 years of terraforming knowledge represents strategic value that cannot be ignored. Sarah was already moving back to the communications console. With your permission, Admiral, I'd like to respond to their offer. Proceed. But with appropriate caution. Sarah's response was characteristically direct. We accept your offer of friendship. Storm dancers. Our songs may be simple, but they come from hearts that refuse to stop hoping. If you're willing to teach us about taming lightning, we'll show you why humans sing even when the universe seems determined to silence us. The response from the dragons carried an emotional resonance that transcended species barriers. Then let the first song begin, Sky Swimmer. Send one of your hope carriers to walk with us in the realm of storms, and we will send one of our lightning weavers to dance with you among the quiet spaces. If friendship can survive the journey between fire and ice, perhaps we can teach the galaxy new songs about impossible things becoming possible. Marcus looked around the laboratory at the humans, Altarians, and other species present. History was being made, not in some grand diplomatic chamber, but in a cramped mining platform laboratory by people brave enough to choose hope over fear. The volunteer selection process took exactly 3 minutes. Sarah Martinez stepped forward without hesitation, her xenobiological training and natural courage making her the obvious choice for humanity's first ambassador to a class 2 within Deathworld. The dragons had provided detailed specifications for a protective suit that could survive their realm's hostile conditions, and the platform's fabrication systems were already building the necessary equipment. You're insane, Dr. Park said as he watched Sarah review the environmental data. The surface temperature varies between -200 and +400 degrees Celsius. The atmospheric pressure would crush an unprotected human in seconds, and the electromagnetic storms could fry your nervous system even through the protective suit. All the more reason to go, Sarah replied, checking the suit's life support specifications. If we're going to establish meaningful contact with the Kethavari, someone has to be brave enough to meet them on their own territory. Marcus helped her into the environmental suit, its crystalline components designed according to dragon specifications. The suit looked like a work of art as much as protective equipment, with energy-conducting channels that would allow its wearer to survive in the electromagnetic environment of Kepler 442c's surface. The Dragons have been refining this design for hours, he said, sealing the suit's connections. According to their data, you'll be able to survive down there for up to 72 hours. Let's hope it doesn't take that long to make friends, Sarah replied, her voice slightly distorted by the suit's communication system. Admiral Zexhai monitored the preparations with military efficiency. Dr. Martinez, you will maintain constant communication with the platform. Any sign of hostile intent from the planetary inhabitants and you will be extracted immediately. Understood, Admiral. Though I suspect the Dragons are more interested in conversation than conflict. The Kethvari had prepared their own ambassador for the exchange. Through the laboratory's displays, they could watch as a massive serpentine form emerged from deep within the planet's crust. The dragon was magnificent even by their species' standards, its crystalline scales flickering with controlled lightning as it navigated through the toxic storms toward the planet's surface. I am Kel'Thuzad, weaver of the deep currents, the dragon introduced itself. I have volunteered to carry our hopes to the realm of gentle winds and quiet stars. May the songs we learn from each other echo through the spaces between worlds. The name sent a chill through Marcus. In Earth's ancient mythologies, similar names had belonged to powerful beings of magic and mystery. But the dragon that bore this name radiated curiosity and hope rather than threat. How will Kel'Thuzad survive in space? Torres asked. Our environmental systems aren't designed for beings that feed on electromagnetic energy. The Dragons had anticipated this concern. They had constructed a specialized containment field that could maintain the energy patterns necessary for their ambassador's survival while preventing harm to the platform's inhabitants and equipment. The field would create a miniature version of Kepler 442c's electromagnetic environment, complete with controlled lightning storms for sustenance. They've thought of everything, Veltar observed, studying the technical specifications. This level of preparation suggests they've been planning for eventual contact with other species for centuries. Sarah's descent to the planet's surface was monitored by every sensor on the platform. The Dragons had cleared a landing zone in the northern hemisphere, using their control over the planet's weather systems to create a temporary calm zone where the shuttle could safely touch down. As Sarah's feet touched the surface of Kepler 442c, she became the first human to set foot on a class-away Deathworld. The suit's cameras transmitted images of a landscape that was both beautiful and terrifying. Crystalline formations jutted from the ground like frozen lightning, while in the distance, active volcanoes painted the toxic sky with sheets of molten color. Visual contact, Sarah reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. I can see Kel'Thuzad approaching from the east. He's even more magnificent in person. The dragon that emerged from the electromagnetic storm was a creature of living legend, nearly 200 meters long. His body was covered in scales that shifted color with each pulse of energy that flowed through them. When he moved, the very air around him crackled with controlled lightning, and his eyes held the wisdom of millennia. Welcome to the realm of endless storms, sky swimmer, Kel'Thuzad said. His voice somehow transmitted directly through the electromagnetic spectrum to Sarah's suit. It has been 50,000 years since another thinking being walked these paths with us. Thank you for having me, Sarah replied, her scientific training warring with pure awe at the creature before her. Your world is incredible. Hostile but incredible. We learned long ago that beauty and danger often share the same song, Kel'Thuzad replied. Your people seem to understand this truth as well. We have observed your mining platform dancing with the storms rather than simply hiding from them. Meanwhile, on the platform, Kel'Thuzad's electromagnetic essence was materializing within the containment field. The dragon's presence was immediately felt by every piece of electronic equipment on the station, but rather than causing disruption, his energy patterns seemed to harmonize with the platform's systems. Remarkable, Dr. Park said, monitoring the dragon's integration with their technology. He's not interfering with our systems. He's actually improving their efficiency by optimizing the electromagnetic flows. The dragon's form within the containment field was smaller than his physical body on the planet's surface, but no less impressive. Lightning danced between crystalline formations that grew and shifted as he moved, creating patterns of incredible beauty. I greet you, Builders of bridges between stars, Kel'Thuzad said, his presence filling the laboratory with a sense of ancient wisdom. It is good to speak with minds that dream of places they have never seen. Marcus found himself staring at the dragon with unashamed wonder. You've been alone down there for 50,000 years. How did you maintain hope for so long? Hope is not something that requires maintenance, little spark-bearer, Kel'Thuzad replied gently. Hope is something that grows stronger when it is shared. We have kept the hope of our people alive by believing that someday others would come who understood the beauty of refusing to surrender to impossibility. Admiral HFY monitored the exchange with growing amazement. In her military career, she had overseen dozens of first-contact situations, but none had proceeded with this level of immediate understanding and mutual respect. The cultural exchange protocols usually take months to establish basic communication, she said. These beings achieved emotional resonance with humans within hours. On the planet's surface, Sarah was learning about the dragon's relationship with their hostile world. Kel'Thuzad guided her through landscapes that told the story of 50 millennia of adaptation and determination. They passed cities built into the heart of active volcanoes, where dragons channeled geothermal energy to maintain civilization in the depths of hell. They saw gardens where crystal flowers bloomed in toxic soil, their beauty a testament to life's refusal to surrender to death. You've made this world beautiful, Sarah said as they stood on a cliff overlooking a valley filled with lightning-powered waterfalls. It's still dangerous, but there's beauty here that takes my breath away. Beauty and hope are the same song sung in different keys, Kel'Thuzad replied. Your people carry that song in your hearts even when you swim through the dark between stars. That is why we believe we can learn from each other. The cultural exchange had begun with a simple conversation between two beings from radically different worlds, but it was already clear that this first contact would reshape both civilizations in ways no one could have predicted. 6 months after first contact, the mining platform Prometheus had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. A joint research station where humans and dragons worked together to unlock the secrets of terraforming impossible worlds. The trilithium deposits that had originally brought humans to Kepler 442c now seemed insignificant compared to the knowledge being shared between species. Dr. Sarah Martinez stood in the expanded laboratory, watching holographic displays that showed the first successful test of human-dragon terraforming techniques. On a small moon in a nearby system, they had managed to transform barren rock into fertile soil, using a combination of human agricultural science and HFY electromagnetic manipulation. Plants that had never existed before grew in soil that had been created from nothing but raw minerals and carefully applied energy. The preliminary results exceed all projections, she reported to the Joint Council that now oversaw the project. Representatives from Earth, the Galactic Council, and the Dragon Collective participated in daily briefings that had become the foundation for an entirely new approach to galactic colonization. Marcus Chen, now serving as Chief Engineering Coordinator for the joint project, reviewed construction plans for the first human dragon colony ships. These vessels would be capable of not just surviving in hostile environments, but actively transforming them during the journey between stars. The dragon's electromagnetic manipulation capabilities combined with human adaptability create possibilities we never imagined, he said, highlighting design specifications that looked more like living organisms than traditional spacecraft. These ships will grow and evolve during transit, adapting to whatever conditions they encounter. Kel'Thuzad had become a permanent resident of the station, his electromagnetic essence housed in an expanded containment field that allowed him to interact directly with human technology and research teams. His presence had revolutionized their understanding of energy manipulation and environmental control. The songs your people sing while working have taught us something we had forgotten, he said during the daily briefing. Joy is not merely the absence of suffering. It is an active force that transforms the nature of existence itself. The cultural exchange had produced unexpected benefits for both species. Dragons who had spent millennia focused solely on survival had rediscovered creativity and humor through human influence. Meanwhile, humans had learned to think in geological timescales and approach challenges with the kind of patient determination that could reshape entire worlds. Admiral HFY, now serving as Galactic Council liaison to the project, reviewed colonization proposals with growing amazement.
17 worlds have been identified as candidates for human-dragon joint colonies.
These include 3 Class X Deathworlds that were previously considered impossible to explore, let alone inhabit. The applications from potential colonists are extraordinary, Torres added, scrolling through personnel files. We're not just getting the usual desperate families looking for new opportunities. Scientists, artists, engineers, and philosophers from dozens of species want to be part of these colonies. The joint colonies represented something entirely new in galactic civilization. Rather than simply extracting resources or establishing strategic outposts, they were designed to be collaborative experiments in creating new forms of life and beauty. Each colony would combine human ingenuity with dragon environmental mastery to transform hostile worlds into something unprecedented. Dr. Park monitored communications between the various dragon collectives across Kepler 442c. The entire planetary civilization is involved in this project now. They're sharing knowledge that some collectives have kept secret for millennia. The dragons had revealed that their species possessed knowledge extending far beyond terraforming. They understood stellar engineering, consciousness transfer, and forms of mathematics that could predict and manipulate probability itself. But they had guarded these secrets carefully, waiting for a species they could trust not to use such knowledge for destruction. Trust is like hope, Kel'Thuzad explained when asked about his people's willingness to share their deepest knowledge. It grows stronger when it is given freely, rather than hoarded fearfully. Your people have shown us that. Power shared becomes power multiplied. The first joint colony ship was nearing completion in orbit around Kepler 442c. The vessel was a work of art as much as engineering, its hull incorporating dragon crystalline technology that would allow it to generate its own energy and adapt to changing conditions. The crew would include humans, dragons, and volunteers from several other species who wanted to be part of this grand experiment. Sarah had volunteered to serve as the colony's chief xenobiologist, a decision that surprised no one who knew her. Marcus would serve as engineering coordinator, bringing 4 decades of experience with impossible conditions to the project. Where will you go first? Veltar asked. The Altarian scientist had become one of the project's most enthusiastic supporters. His initial skepticism transformed into genuine excitement about the possibilities they were creating. Kepler 100 Sarah replied, calling up star charts that showed their destination. It's a Class 7 death world with active volcanism and a toxic atmosphere, but the dragons believe it has the potential to become a garden world within 50 years. 50 years? Torres shook her head in amazement. Traditional terraforming takes centuries at minimum. Traditional terraforming fights against a world's nature, Kel'Thuzad observed. We have learned to work with what exists and guide it toward what could be. When you understand the songs that matter sings to itself, you can teach it to sing new melodies. The philosophical implications of dragon science had captivated human thinkers across known space. Universities were establishing new departments dedicated to studying Kethavari approaches to existence, while artists drew inspiration from electromagnetic poetry that painted emotions in light and energy. But perhaps the most significant change was happening on Kepler 442c itself. For the first time in 50,000 years, the dragons were actively working to transform their world not just for survival, but for beauty. Human colonists were arriving to establish permanent settlements in specially prepared zones, where the environment had been modified to support multiple species. They're creating gardens, Marcus said, watching real-time feeds from the planet's surface. Crystal flowers bloomed in carefully, tended plots while human children played alongside. Young dragons in areas where the electromagnetic storms had been tamed into gentle light displays. The sight of human, children, and dragon younglings learning together had become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. Here was proof that the universe's most hostile environments could be transformed into places where life not only survived but thrived. The greatest discovery, Kel'Thuzad said as they watched the children play, is not that we can reshape worlds to suit our needs. The greatest discovery is that we can reshape ourselves to find joy in places we never expected to look. As the first joint colony ship prepared for departure, representatives from dozens of species had requested permission to establish their own collaborative projects with the Human-Dragon Alliance. The impossible had become possible, and possibility was proving to be contagious. 6 months earlier, Marcus Chen had come to Kepler 442c hoping to earn enough money for his daughter's surgery. Now he stood on the bridge of a ship that would carry the combined hopes of two species to a distant world, ready to prove that the universe's most dangerous places could become its most beautiful. The Deathworld dragon and the bird who taught him hope had found each other in the storms of an impossible world, and together they were teaching the galaxy that even the darkest places could learn to sing songs of light.